So lately, I've been talking about how like non-duality can be dangerous. I think I've been doing that for years, because I meet so many people. It's like an opposite thing that I have to do, because I meet so many people that get into non-duality when they're trying to use it to fix their psychology. It's like I'm always having to speak about the dangers of non-duality and the negative effects that it can have on people, which has a role and is important. But I never then talk, well, I do talk about the beauty of non-duality, but I think I'm standing on this barrier where I'm holding back a bit. And now I feel like going in the opposite direction and just speaking about the beauty and the wonder of non-duality. It completely saved my life. Not just a little bit. Like, I feel if I didn't get into non-duality, I would have completely self-sabotaged, and I maybe would have had addictive problems or been on antidepressants or something like this. It absolutely saved my life. And I owe that all to non-duality. And what comes with non-duality, questioning who I was. It was mind-blowing questioning who I was. Absolutely mind-blowing. Like, yeah. And I just see in society, even though I'm really quite removed from society, but I just see that a lot of people are unhappy. And I'm speaking to a select few that kind of like maybe they come into non-duality, maybe need to do some therapy and work on the personal self. But if I take away from speaking to that minority and look at the whole of society, I think if people questioned who they were, who they believed themselves to be, it would be really profound. Like, I think a lot of people in this society are really suffering. But just thinking about people getting old and losing their intimate partner and, and living alone. And then also, as you become older, you become less relevant in society in a way, which shouldn't be the case, but it's the way that our society's set up. Like, a lot of identity becomes through work, through colleagues, through doing things. And as you become older and less capable of doing things, I can imagine that a massive thing that you would feel is kind of rejected and left out by society. And then also you've got this death thing that's coming closer. So there is a massive sense of maybe abandonment. But this isn't really talked about very much. And everybody is going to get old. Well, some people won't, they will die young. But the majority of people are going to get old. So everybody that's listening to this is in a way going to go through it. And if you get really existential about it, is in a way going to go through it right now. Even if you're like 32 or 25, you're getting old is only ever going to happen right now, which is like really mind-blowing. I'm so grateful that I got these concepts into my life, because prior to that, I never believed and realized that there is only one right now, and this right now is timeless. We have named time, we have created time as a society, and then we imagine time. It's not actually a reality. Scientists don't really know what time is. It's illusory, it's a weird thing. There seems to be a movement of images and a movement of experiences, and we name this time, but it's not a fixed thing, it's not real. Prior to getting into non-duality, I just thought I was real, time was real, the world was real, and everything was super serious. But it's not serious. Life is really weird. Scientists don't even really know what space is. Like, what is space and what is distance? We, again, have name space, and it's like there is a unit here which is called me. I am the center of my world, and then there is this space, and I move to other things. But when you begin to question this like center point called you, are you actually ever moving to other things? Like, these concepts and these ideas are super beautiful because they de-pick all meaning and all understanding that you have, and then what is left. That can be dangerous if you aren't psychologically aware of what's happening in the person, because you're kind of pulling out what's that game again, made of blocks, Jenga. You're kind of like pulling out the wooden blocks on Jenga, but it's like, if you haven't got a conceptualization of what your personality is and what your structure is, that can have a catastrophic collapse. But again, I can't be responsible for keep saying that, and I want to talk about non-duality and the beauty of it without these limits of trying to like cover all bases of the people I'm speaking to. But yeah, this is super profound. Like, what is it to be alive? And this idea of a you that is separate from all things, moving through space and time, where that's not actually the reality. So the 86-year-old that's going to apparently die in the future is only ever going to die now. And then you think like, I want to awake. There is a me here that wants to awake in the future, but there isn't really a you there that wants to wake in the future. There is this moment, and awakening happens in this moment. This moment is never ending. It never starts or stops, and we don't know what it is. We can call it consciousness because that's what a lot of like great masters from the East called it, but we don't even know what that is. It's like consciousness too could be illusory. There's just this not to thing happening that we can't name, we can't find, and we can't ever like grab onto. But it seems to be linked with consciousness, because this moment can only ever exist if there is consciousness. If there is no consciousness, then nothing exists. Does it? So consciousness is a fundamental of this moment. Like, it's the one thing in this moment that never leaves. So everything else seemingly leaves, even though it doesn't really leave, but it transforms into other things. So if you walked out of the house into the garden and met another person, then that's a new appearances that take place rather than this one. But what hasn't left is this moment and consciousness and this sense of being. These are the three fundamentals to every experience. So they're profound, even if we want to say that consciousness is illusory too. You could go for it and say everything's illusory. You know, this written on my arm is Pranya Paramitta's sutra, that the Heart Sutra. And in the Heart Sutra, so the Buddha say, or she says, she's the she's the Buddha of wisdom. She's not a bodhisattva, so she's the Buddha of wisdom, which is so beautiful that in Buddhism, the feminine is the wisdom. And the emptiness, the nothing, is compassion. Isn't that beautiful? So in her sutra, she says quite clearly, consciousness too is illusion. She could be talking about personal consciousness. I'm not talking about personal consciousness. There is this personal awareness that happens. So there is a consciousness that's conscious of a personal awareness. And this personal awareness isn't inherently aware or alive or conscious. It's like a mechanism of focusing a camera, and we just call this personal awareness. It's like the ability to think about yourself, like being aware of this body mind, looking in the mirror and like seeing this form and being able to say, this is me. But there is something which is conscious to that, like that is seen. That movement is seen. The personal awareness, like you, is seen. So there is something which is experiencing that. So there's something prior to that. So the things that we can get down to experientially in this moment is there is consciousness, this sense of beingness, like it's not dead. This is, and this this moment, and they're not really, they're not separate. Not even not really. They're not separate. When that consciousness is perceived, even though it's not someone that perceived it, but when there is a waking up and a knowing of this, you cannot find the beginning and end of it. Like, where does consciousness start? It seems to move from this body, but that's again a thought. In the experience, experientially, consciousness is not separate from anything it's conscious of. The same of this I amness or beingness, but it's not I am something. It's not I am as a knowing that goes into personal awareness. It's this sense of being alive, like not like that this is. And that sense of being, this is, this love, like I associate that with love, is everywhere as well. You can't find it. And it's love. And it seemingly comes from the heart, but not really. The same with the looking, seemingly comes from the head, but not really. We can say that in time. When I say in time, I mean in thought. We can say that when we think about it and reflect. But in the very instant of what's happening right now, words do not exist and we can't say anything. It's just happening, and there is not two. There isn't a subject object. This is experiential, but not somebody's experience. Somebody, as soon as it goes into somebody, as soon as it goes into personal awareness, then you go into thinking. Even though it feels like an energy, it is also an energy, but you're going into time. That's why I always call it time rather than thinking. So you're moving in time. But what's being spoken about is timeless and spaceless. It's unnameable, but yet it's happening. It's the core of experiencing. So it is experiencing, it is life, but it's not something that can be grabbed hold of. Your mind can't understand this. It can to an extent, but it can't really know this until there's an experience of it. That's so beautiful. And this is what I call the end of suffering, but maybe that's too dramatic. Like, I don't even care what you call it, but this awakening is something detaches. So originally, when I first started speaking, I would say that it was, there is no me, but there is a character, and that's kind of confusing. And I'm not really sure that I'm speaking like the other Advaita, Neo-Advaita teachers in which I used to listen to. So I moved away from that. There is a character that always appears. There needs to be some form of personal awareness. So it's not like there is no me, like there is no personal awareness. There is a Lisa here, like, that's like, I want to have a cup of tea. No, Lisa, you're not allowed a cup of tea because the belly doesn't like it. Please, no. English tea I'm talking about. English cool cup of tea, black tea. we don't account for all the other teas. We're just like, tea is black tea, all right, with milk. So I've moved away from speaking like that, and realized that I'm not 100% sure what these other people are talking about, because there's always going to be some form of identification with this body, seemingly. I mean, absolutely, in this moment there isn't. So you could also simultaneously say there isn't, but there is seemingly. Like, this person comes back when it needs to. The mother comes into the room and it's like, hello, mum. Like, there is some personality. There's some form of not identification with the table or with the floor or with the sofa. It's not like mum comes into the room and then I'm a bed, like, hello, mum, I'm the bed. In one way, absolutely. In this instant, I am everything. But there's some form of experiencing through this body when we think about it in time, and then a character that comes up and functions in this. although the Neo-Advaita teachers would say there is a character, but I'm still not positive we're speaking about the same thing. I don't want to make assumptions. But in the awakening, there is something that happens where there is a detachment from that. It's like the experiencer detaches from the personal awareness or something. I don't know. I've not opened up the brain. I don't really know. Nobody knows. We can't find it because scientists haven't even really worked out where thinking comes from, let alone what's happening in this awakening. But this experientially, what happens or feels like happens is that the consciousness looking, the sense of who you are that never leaves, detaches from that personal awareness. And in the experience, it's kind of free. It's no longer bound in that, but there's still a character there. And this is really important to me, maybe not to others, but maybe for some of you that are listening, because I always thought prior to that, even though I've been told lots of time, that awakening was in somehow about me and I would become a perfect person. And even after the awakening, I think there were some ideas in the Lisa character of how to behave and what to be. It's like, because often when this is spoken about, it's spoken about by the person becoming more peaceful, the person worrying less. And that does happen, but it's or the person, being less difficult, but it does happen, but not in the way you expect it. It's more like it all just becomes a bit see-through. Like the most important thing is who you are, which is this freedom, and then everything in the personal world is more free to be as it is, to be itself and not to hold on to things so much. That's very confusing because, in Buddhism, in many traditions, it's always this focus on the way you're behaving. There is a shift in behavior, I would say, but I would say it's really dependent on each individual, really. It's, if you really suppressed your anger before, you might actually, after awakening, become more angry. So it's all different. And also this character is always evolving. So it's not like the character finishes, the character never finishes. So the awakening happened and there's something that's always finished and something that's always free, but the character never finishes. And I really love that part of this teaching, which isn't my teaching. I'm not trying to say this belongs to Lisa. In one way, it's coming from nothing. And from the character level, it's coming from all these great teachers and masters that I've listened to in the apparent past and through this brain thinking and working things out. So it's like a combination really of everything else, of everything. So in both ways, it's like coming from everything, which is beautiful. But what I think is really important is that every teacher that's teaching this is very clear that on the human level they can expand and they can become more balanced and more free and more healthy. If they don't do that, then it tends to be that they become a new identification, which is okay, but it's just they become a bit stuck in the personality structure. It's because the nature of everything is to expand. So how could a human be finished? And also I think that it's a protection against cults. If the teacher is openly admitting that they're imperfect and they're expanding, it's harder for them to set up a cult, because one thing that a cult is dependent on is the teacher being perfect and the teacher being all-knowing and the teacher being godlike figure. But when they see and express that they're not this godlike figure, on the ultimate level they are, but on the human level they're learning and growing and expanding. And they might currently have more information and freedom on the human level to you, which they could teach, but at any point you could rocket past them. It's not like they are the fixed hierarchy or authority. It's like everything, you know, it's like if a mechanic is, you know, has a student, at some point the student can go past the teacher and learn more than the teacher, or it could always be that the teacher knows more, you know. Doesn't really matter, but it protects, I think, to an extent against this cult thing. If you're listening to a teacher that's saying they are there and they are finished and that they have it, then just be conscious that that's a really, like, they're there on the human level, that's a really big thing to claim, and that can be used in lots of different ways. It can also not be, but it tends to be that, you know, if they're teaching publicly, it becomes this whole political thing. And people are very susceptible to these bold claims. I remember I wanted a teacher that claimed all these really bold things. I didn't want somebody that still said they had issues. Partly because of narcissism in this personality structure, you know, like, I want the best ultimate teacher, but also because I thought that was safe. If they said they didn't have issues, that was safer than someone that said they did have issues. But it's opposite to what you can think sometimes. Yes. So coming back to the title, it's just so beautiful that you aren't everything you think yourself to be. Like, what else is happening? Most people are walking around with this idea, I am somebody and I'm separate from someone else, and therefore they're my competitor, which on the human level has truth to it, but it's like they totally believe that. They believe that as reality. That is the only truth. Like, I am a human and there is other. Whereas this is other truth, that you on the fundamental level are exactly the same as other. What's experiencing that moment is not bound to the character. The consciousness, the looking, the moment is never bound to the character. It's here. It includes them. So you look at each other and you think that you're looking at characters. You think you're looking at somebody that's a pain, that's this, that's that, but you're not. You're looking at something so infinite and mysterious. The greatest minds of our societies cannot understand it. And I would love to call it love. It's love. You're looking at pure love. So you've got the humans, to say if the human's got road rage and it's like meh, 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 at you because you cut them up or something. Like, the person is in panic, the person is in fight and flight, but in the deeper level, you're the same. And I'm so used to these concepts, like, this is just the way I see the world on the human level, but also just as this moment, that it's so abstract for me, the idea that people don't. So I kind of forget to teach that sometimes, because it's just the way it is. What is looking now? And who is this Lisa that's separate to you? What is this computer that's separate to you? What, prior to your thoughts, prior to your personal awareness, to everything you think you are, what is happening? Who is experiencing now? Who's experiencing right now? Who are you having problems with? What are you having problems with? What is here now?